Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Okay, good morning, everybody. We are at the top of the hour, so we really should get going. Welcome, everybody, and thank you for joining today's webinar on how to streamline your document control and issue processes. Your presenters today are myself, Alistair Clark. I'm a Customer Success Manager with Newformer. I've been with the company for almost 7 years, helping our customers maximize their investment in Project Center, which is Newformer's flagship project information management product. Newformer as a company is in its 15th year and continues to grow its user base with over 1,500 customers worldwide. One of those customers, PRP Architects, has been with us for over 6 years, and I'm delighted to say that Andrew Swarbrick, who is an associate at PRP Architects, is here today as a co-presenter. Thank you for joining us today, Andrew.
Great, thank you, Alistair, and thank you for inviting me to take part in my webinar.
So today's agenda, we're going to start in a moment with Andrew, who is going to introduce PRP Architects and give us more of an insight into his role there. He's then going to go on and talk about the use of Project Center at PRP Architects, so kind of an overview over the years, how it's been used, before diving a little bit deeper into the document control process at PRP and how Newformer Project Center is used to help with that process. After that, we're going to have a short Q&A between Andrew and myself, really looking at some of the features and the value around using Newformer document control, which will lead us nicely then into a product demo. I am going to set the scene a little bit in that and introduce Project Center as a product, but we're very quickly then going to move into document control and cover the idea of sheet publishing and issuance, which is really the kind of the topic of today's webinar. And finally, a general Q&A session between myself and Andrew and you, the audience, the participants. If you do have questions, please add that question as we go along using your GoToWebinar interface. We will try and answer every question at the end. If we don't quite have time, then we certainly will follow up with you after the session has completed. Okay, so let's get started, and we're going to start, as I said before, with Andrew, who's going to give us an introduction to PRP and in his role. So over to you, Andrew.
Brilliant, thanks, Alistair, and I'm looking forward to inputting into this webinar. PRP is a UK architectural firm. We have anywhere between 250 to 300 staff, and I think we're approximately 280 staff. We've got 3 UK studios, one in central London, which is our largest, with about 180 staff, and then an office in Surrey, which is where I work, and then an office up in Manchester. We are an interdisciplinary practice, and we offer architectural, urban design and master planning, landscape, sustainability, interior design and project management services. We design and deliver homes and places of varying scale, complexity and diversity, and we take great pride in offering a fully integrated design services with our broad range of skills. If you want to hop on to the next slide, there's some lovely images of some of our projects while I talk a little bit more about PRP and about myself. I am an architectural technologist by trade, and I've developed a real passion for design technologies. I really like the way we can now interrogate our designs in new ways, communicate our designs better, whether to clients, consultants, or between our teams, and collaborate with our design consultants in really effective and efficient ways. PRP consider ourselves as early adopters of Revit, and we've had Revit as our primary design software for the last kind of 8 years, with a progressive rollout across the practice and design teams. And we now have an established capability and track record of using Revit to deliver front-end and technical designs projects. I think that goes hand in hand with the digitalization of our industry, and the way that we are now changing the deliverables, where PDFs are now becoming the norm. I think we can all relate to the fact that there's an increasing amount of electronic information that we all have to manage, and the amount of email traffic is increasing, and now it's all about PDFs, Excel documents, Word documents, BIM models are now becoming the norm as well. So with that in mind, about 6 years ago, PRP invested in Nuforma Project Centre to assist managing and coordinating this increasing amount of electronic information efficiently and effectively.
Perfect. That's a great introduction. Thank you, Andrew. And certainly at Nuforma, over our 15 years, we've seen a massive growth in the size of projects and the amount of data that our customers are having to manage. I also wanted to pause and just look at PRP by the Nuforma numbers, really. So from our perspective, PRP is a long-standing customer, been with us for over 6 years. 3 locations, London, Manchester and Surrey. So they are a multi-office deployment with Project Centre in each of those locations. We're helping, through Nuforma Project Centre, helping PRP manage a lot of data. So we're talking over 6,000 projects, over 30 terabytes of data, and as Andrew mentioned in his introduction, around about 300 users. PRP are certainly a good size customer for us, but we have a variety of sizes of customers. We have customers that are thousands of seats, right the way down to customers that maybe have 15 or 20 seats with a single office deployment. Everything that we're going to talk about today is really applicable to all size customers. And I think what we see at Nuforma is quite a typical story, I think, from a new customer perspective. There are some real easy wins when using Nuforma Project Centre, things like email filing, search, file sharing. These are, typically really big problems for our new customers. Because Nuforma is such an easy product to deploy, and we're going to talk about how Nuforma works very quickly in the demo. As I say, there's some really easy features for customers to get used to straight out of the gate, but lots and lots of other activities for them to grow into over the years. Is that fair to say that at PRP you've kind of experienced the same kind of adoption?
Absolutely. I think what you've touched on is the amount of information that we generate and have to store. The fact that we've got 3 UK studios and the way in which Nuforma provides me access to all of that information through one interface has been really great. And I think what we have at PRP is originally we have a really well organized Windows folder structure. So we've got all our folders on our system named, and we know where we put our PDFs and our documents from consultants, etc. And what I love about Nuforma is the way it just sits on top of that existing folder structure and just elevates it to the next level. It gives you access to that information in ways which you didn't have before. So on the next slide, I'll continue talking a little bit more about how we've kind of used Nuforma Project Centre generally. As you touched on, we've had it for about 6 years. And it's really over the last 2 to 3 years that we've tried to expand into the other activity centres. So initially, it was an easy win in terms of email management, filing emails, searching emails. It's extremely powerful and very easy for staff to adopt to and see the benefit of it. You can really search for any email across any project, and then you can search for information attached into those emails. So a really, really powerful tool. And then also just searching your folder structure through Nuforma is a really powerful tool as well.
So I think just to summarise, is it fair to say, especially with your multi-office deployment, that Project Centre really helps increase visibility into that data in situ? We're not migrating that or ingesting it into Project Centre. It's really about helping promote that consistent process across projects, so that every user can access a project through Nuforma Project Centre and participate in a PRP process using the Nuforma software.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. It's a common interface that all our staff will look at and have access to, and it's familiar to people.
Yeah, perfect.
So, as I've kind of mentioned, the last 2 to 3 years we've been exploring other activities in Nuforma, apart from the email and the search tool. And now we're moving into, in terms of file discovery, which we've touched on, you've got the Activity Center project files, and just to look through that information that's on your system. You've got markup sessions, so that's marking up drawings and sending them to consultants. In terms of file sharing, you've got the info exchange, so that's exchanging files of large file size and document sets. The transmittals, which will automatically record that information and sending them out. You've got the project management tools such as Project Team, which is just your project directory, action items. I'm toying around with this. I'm not saying that I action every item I have listed and I do it on time, but I try. Submittals, which is essentially just information received. You still log it in and save it in your folder structure, but the submittals, you can again look at it through one interface, easy to use interface. Meeting minutes does exactly what it says on the tin. I use it to record meeting minutes received from the contractor, usually design build. Contractors will send out meeting minutes to me and I can just kind of save them and view them quite easily through meeting minutes. Document sets, collating bits of project information like a planning pack, and again, an easy to use kind of interface. And then obviously Nuforma document control, which is the main focus of this webinar.
Yep, so that's a great description, thank you. Lots of activities, and Nuforma document control really being one of those activities in the UK that we see customers get huge value out of and huge day-to-day use. So I think, Andrew, if I could ask you just to kind of dig into document control a little bit more at PRP and how it's used how Project Center is used to help you with that issuance and revisioning process.
Absolutely, I'll give it my best shot, Alistair. I have been quoted as saying that Nuforma document control has changed my life. Just to underline that, it's my working life, not my personal life. But it's really been great adopting it, particularly over the last 2 to 3 years and using it on live projects. I think our experience of document control and issuing information to consultants is probably similar to some of our listeners. And that we would have an office standard, and with Nuforma then we've changed that, making it a lot easier, improving our quality of our document control and management system. I've really enjoyed it, as I've mentioned, adopting it and getting to grips with it. It's a very easy process to do once it's set up. You use it once, you go through a couple of document revisions, and then it's business as usual. And then also you roll it out onto other projects. Your next project is going to be easier. It's the same experience with Revit. Once you get over that initial setup process, it's a very easy thing and becomes the norm. Then it's all about building confidence in the process. In terms of the document control process, as I mentioned, we use Revit as our primary design software. There's a Nuforma link into Revit. So the process has now become more streamlined. So I've got my PDF in Revit, and all the information has been correctly included on our title block. I open up the Nuforma link. That will then publish straight to Nuforma. So my next step is to open up Nuforma document control, open up that interface, and I can see that PDF record document sitting there with the correct information ready to be issued. And my next step is to click 1 or 2 more buttons into Info Exchange, and that document will go out to whoever I'm sending it to an email address, whether that's contractor, client, design team. And included in that will be the transmittal sheet, which will record the name of the drawing, the revision, and that's essentially that process, which is very, very streamlined. As I mentioned, there's an automatic transmittal sheet sent with that info exchange, which is great. So what I've seen happening on my last 2 projects is that I rarely get asked for a drawing register, which has been a really big relief for me, because it used to be quite a tedious process in Excel. But now with Nuforma document control, I don't get asked for a formal drawing register because the transmittal kind of takes care of that. But in the case where I do get asked for a drawing register, as has been the case on my last project, maybe only 3 times over the course of the project, and that's really for the main contractor to check against their system. So Nuforma will generate that full drawing register at the click of a button, and I can send that, and I know I've got the confidence that I can do that quickly and the information is accurate. So kind of to summarize all of that, I will say that document control is a great one-stop shop to see all the drawings in one long list and all the revision history of each drawing.
No, that's a great description. Thank you. And I like the comment on the drawing register. Many customers kind of move to Newformer having kind of managed their whole document control process in Excel, their register, their deliverables. Really, once you've switched to Newformer document control, we still support the idea of outputting a register, but it is a report. You're moving away from that management of information in Excel, which is obviously more time consuming and subject to the risk of error. So we're going to see that and many of the points that you've covered in your description in our demo shortly. Before we move to the demo, really, I think if we could just have a short Q&A, just to maybe revisit some of the points that you've covered, and maybe some that we haven't, really just to dig into the value and the features in document control. So I'd really like to ask you at PRP, how has adopting document control in Newformer Project Centre helped, firstly, with your quality control process?
Sure. I mean, it's decreased the amount of manual inputs. So you have to enter information and you kind of do it once and then it's carried through the software to the eventual output and record. It's reduced the amount of time checking drawings, so the information on our title block, as mentioned, is put in once and then that's accurate. So you've got more time to check the design information and the quality of the drawing, more so, I believe. And also that there are less copies of those individual PDFs on the system. I think now there's only one PDF on our system, rather than 2 or 3 or 4 spread over the folder structure, which has been brilliant.
Yeah, so that's, again, something we see quite often, people squirreling away copies of files, before they come to Newformer, so that they've got the confidence that they can find what they want when they want, and then the risk creeps in that they're actually not got the latest information. So, we're going to see that again during the demonstration.
Exactly.
Also interested in how Project Centres help with communication with other project stakeholders.
Yeah, I mean, it's the speed of finding information and the confidence that you can get to that information quickly. One example would be just knowing that if someone picks up the phone and asks me a question over the phone, I can go to document control, whether it's a question about a drawing, for example. When did that door appear in the plan? I can go to that drawing and see the whole revision history, and I can probably find out fairly quickly while over the phone, and that means that question doesn't get escalated into a bit of email ping pong, and we can answer it. And that also builds confidence in the team as well. If people can see that you can answer information quickly and robustly, there's just confidence within the team, and also just generally the easier auditing and tracking process with that full revision history is really great.
Perfect. That's a great answer. Thank you. And also, how has it reduced the time taken to issue information?
Yeah, it's just reduced the number of steps, the number of bits of software that you have to open. So, the old way, we've got, Revit, maybe a third-party software to create our PDFs. Then you've got Excel. Whereas now you've just got Revit, and then you open up Newformer and it's all there. It's automatically recorded and tracked, and you've got confidence in that system.
Yeah, so I think streamlining the process, you've mentioned that a few times, is a great summary. Reducing the number of manual steps, reducing the number of components involved in the process, and really reducing that opportunity for risk or for error to creep in.
Yeah, totally.
And just a few more questions, really a little bit more focused on features. So really asking, what Newformer Project Centre document control features do you think have helped PRP the most? And I'm going to put this one out there: publishing and synchronizing sheets from Autodesk Revit.
Yeah, I just love the Streamline process. I don't know if you can gather, but I do love Revit. So just being able to have that Revit interface open and that add-in within the same interface, and publishing them, and also being able to publish them and have that PDF file name the way you want it, whether that's your Office standard, whether it's a BS standard, or it's a project standard that a contractor's document controller wants you to name a file in a particular way. Then new format, Revit link is flexible and will produce that PDF the way you want it.
Yeah, and we're also going to cover in the demo just how we add other types or other file types, maybe information that doesn't come from Revit as well. So yeah, there's a great Streamline process when you're using Autodesk Revit. There's also a great process for bringing other information in as well. So we're going to take a look at that as we move through the demonstration. So we've touched on this a couple of times, but again, just to reiterate, automation of issue sheets and the drawing register. So we've kind of mentioned already that neither of us are massive fans of trying to manage drawing registers, and we do our best to automate that within Project Center.
Definitely. It's that drawing register Excel document, which you want to look nice, and it can be a real pain to kind of manage that Excel drawing register. But hopefully, drawing registers will be a thing of the past in the next coming years, I guess. But essentially, just taking away those manual processes, entering that information once into Revit or whatever BIM authoring or design authoring software you use, and then that will just carry through into new format and be recorded, whether on a drawing register or a transmittal sheet.
Yep, perfect. Centralized revision and issuance history. So I always feel that this is a really important point.
Absolutely. It's just having that one interface where you can see all your drawings listed, and then you can expand on it and see every single revision of that particular drawing. And then you take it to the next level as you get more familiar with it, and you can see when that particular revision was sent, who it was sent to, which is just a really powerful thing. And also the way it kind of links into Info Exchange, and you can see if the recipient has downloaded that information as well, is a nice thing.
Yeah, so just to clarify, Info Exchange, we'll see that shortly. That is the new former component that we can publish information to for external consultants to download information or upload information to the project if you choose to give them access to do so. And finally, the final question really is around easy distribution of controlled files.
Yeah, I mean, what we've kind of discussed, and to hammer home, it's just that streamlined process. It's that one simple to use interface. That this is where I'm going, and then I've got links to send that information out, and you have the confidence that it's being tracked and recorded automatically.
Okay. So that was great, thank you. It's always great to hear firsthand from customers how our software is being used.
No problem.
I would like to move it now into a product demo, so hopefully I can illustrate all of the points that Andrew has made. So I'm going to switch over to Project Center. As I mentioned in the introduction, I'm going to do a really quick overview of the software before we dive into document control. There may be people on the call who've never seen Project Center before. So this is the user interface. I have my projects, which are the projects I'm working on at the moment, all projects, which would be all of the projects in my organization. I'm going to open up one of my projects just to show you that we have a home page for each project. And really, new forms approach is a very light touch. Andrew covered this in his description of how it's used at PRP Architects. We are not migrating all of your file data off your file server and locking it away in Newformer. Your information stays exactly where it is on the file system. We also connect into some EDM systems like SharePoint On-Prem, SharePoint Online, Bentley ProjectWise, and a couple of others as well. So Newformer is all about not migrating your data, but providing that view over those multiple sources of data so that you can search and you can use those files through different Newformer processes, which we call activity centers. So this really, on this page, are the activity centers that are available to this project. I've minimized some of these for clarity today. I'm just going to concentrate on a couple of the basics. So I wanted to show project files, really just to reiterate, if I say Explorer tasks, selecting file system, then we see exactly the same on the file system. So we're not asking you to adhere to a particular folder structure, a particular standard. Your Windows permissions, stay in place. We respect those. We really are just layering on top of what is already there, and then adding functionality. So a really quick example of that would be these two folders here. These are blue. These have been shared. So we see customers get great use out of what we call shared folders for sharing information to the same people on very regular occurrences. So, for instance, sharing models on a weekly or bi-weekly time frame. You can set up shared folders so that you can really easily synchronize that information. Search is something that I really would like to show. So let's just quickly search for the word purlin. That finds 4 files with the word purlin in. I'm going to pick the DWG, which is going to open up the new former viewer. And think of this DWG as something that hasn't been checked into new former. It's something that was on the file system. Maybe it existed, long before new former was brought on board. And you can see that we found the word steel purlin within this DWG, and we can go directly to where that was within the file. So even before you've used any of the other tools, bringing new former on board, pointing it at your existing project data gives you great visibility into that information, to use files in workflows and to search contents of those files. If we swap out our search to concrete, this time I'm going to focus in on email. And we're searching a single project, but I could search multiple projects as well. So the same scenario here is now we're finding email that's got the word concrete in. If I double click on an email, it's going to open up in Outlook or whatever my mail client is. And actually I'm being told in here that the word concrete has been found in an attachment to this email. So the email represents the email that the whole team has filed. So again, we can see the fact that we found the word concrete in this document. Really easy to use. As I say, layers over the top of your existing data. If we go back to the home page, let's just touch on one more activity before we go into document control, project email. So we saw that search, but equally we have an activity center dedicated to looking at all of that email that the team has filed. So there's a really straightforward process of filing email through your mail client, whether it's drag and drop, or if you're an Outlook user using AddIn. But all of that email filed by the team ends up as a deduplicated set of information saved alongside all of your other project files and fully searchable and accessible through your former project center. So that really hopefully sets the scene. Low change management, because we're not taking your data, asking you to redefine permissions. We're layering over exactly what's there, increasing visibility, whether it's a single office or multiple offices, and then giving you a great set of tools to work with your files. So if we take a look at document control, so I'm going to look at something with some data in, and then we're going to jump out into another project with nothing in, and we're going to go through the whole process. But I really just wanted to illustrate a couple of Andrew's comments. So this is that single view on document control. So I'm going to switch off my package view. So I can look at everything that's been issued really easily. I can expand to show the revision history. If I click on this row, it's going to show me the latest revision, but equally I could go back and look at a previous revision. I can even grab multiple revisions and do a visual comparison in the new former viewer if I want to see what's changed between those two revisions. We talked about the drawing register report. Well, I can do that really easily from here. Create report, create document register report. Again, we can have different designs, different styles, and I'm going to click OK. And then this generates that kind of classic matrix report that kind of many people on the call I'm sure will be familiar with. But again, this is an output for us. This is not where you manage your data. It's really just being able to output this as a kind of how document control sits at any particular moment in time. Andrew gave a great example of having to provide that to a contractor on his projects on several occasions.
Exactly, that's great that you can just generate that so quickly, and you just send that file, and that's that done, and the contractor's happy.
Yep. So let's quickly jump into another project and let's look at this whole document control process from the start. So in here I have 0. I have nothing at the beginning of the project. I can populate document control by either a process called add revisions from files. I can import information, so that metadata from Excel. So if I've got a list of deliverables early on the project, I can populate document control that way. Today we're going to look at populating document control from Revit. And we're going to go from Revit to Newformer. It's just as feasible to build those lists of sheet information in Newformer and synchronize that to create sheets in Revit. But we're going to look at it today from Revit to Newformer. Before I dive into document control, just quickly to introduce the AddIn, Newformer add-in for Revit. We can see we've got markup sessions and action items, really giving me the opportunity to grab a screenshot, mark it up, email it, share it with a colleague. I can link it to an element in the drawing if I wanted to. So if I was sharing that with a colleague, they could go to that markup session or an action item, see the information I've captured, and also if they have the model open, jump straight to that element in Revit. Building elements allows me to synchronize things like doors, windows, out of the model into Newformer. So we have an activity center in there for building elements. Then if I'm not a Revit user, I can interact with that information. Maybe I want to work with it in Excel through Newformer. Maybe I want to update all the fire rating or something that I want to do, big data tasks that then can be reflected back into Revit by the Revit user. Spatial index, works both ways. It could be that I receive a list of plan sizes for rooms from the client. I might want to bring those into Revit as unplaced spaces, or equally I might want to synchronize the actual areas out for my and room details out from the model. We can then use those in Newformer for things like snagging. We have apps for snagging. I can snag against particular rooms. Project information is a new feature, very straightforward. Allows me to take information, either standard fields or custom fields, from Newformer Project Center and actually populate the information that we would see in our project information parameters down here. Right, so that was a really quick introduction. Let's now go into document control, which was the main aim of this session. So if I hit the down arrow, we've got a number of tasks in here. Publishing sheets to PDF, that's a straightforward, I want to name and publish sheets to a particular location in my project. Great for the idea of a check set. Synchronize sheets, we're going to start with this first. This is getting the metadata out of the sheet and into populating document control. And then in the middle, we have a combination of both. We want to up-rev a deliverable in document control. We also want to sync, create the PDF, link it to Newformer document control ready for issuance. So I'm going to start with synchronized sheets. And if you recall, we have nothing in document control at the moment. Out of the box, we're going to match up sheet number and sheet name. So if I was to synchronize now, we would get all of the sheets that I selected down here. We would get the sheet number and sheet name in Newformer document control. I can expand on that through sync settings. And actually, I've got a number of custom sheet parameters that I've set up. You may have noticed when we first came into Revit that we had a label in the title block made out of different components for our sheet number. I have these as VS, and so I can grab these. These are my custom Revit sheet parameters, and I can say create matching extended property in Newformer, and that's going to go ahead and create extra columns in document control to receive this information. I can then map those to the Revit parameters. So if I was now to look at our VS, we'll see that these have all automatically mapped from Revit to Newformer. Again, depending on the use case, we could choose to go from Newformer to Revit, but in this example, we're going to populate each one of these from the information in Revit. So if I OK that, what we see now is rather than just sheet number and name, we've got a whole host of additional Revit parameters, sheet parameters, and we've also brought these in as columns here because sometimes it's really useful to use these extra sheet parameters as a way of filtering down on the information that you want to sync into Project Center. So I'm not going to sync everything. I'm just going to pick this particular architectural set. So let's grab those 11. And now I'm going to synchronize. And at the end of this process, if we go into new format and refresh, we've now got all of the information that we synchronized out of those 11 sheets into new format document control. We got the additional columns, so we can filter, we can group on that information. One thing we didn't get is a concatenated number, because we want to keep the sheet number small for references between sheets, but actually when it comes to issuance in our transmittals and our document control reports, we want the full multi-component number in here. And that's something we can do as well in our sync. So synchronize sheets, if we go back and we go back into our sync settings, if I highlight the number, then we can see at the moment it's got a one-to-one relationship. If I change that mapping behavior, sorry, not the mapping behavior, the parameter, then we can see sheet number. I can add more, so I can concatenate any of my sheet parameters. As a quick way of doing this, I'm just going to grab that from Notepad, and we're going to come back in here and bring those in. So now my number is actually in new format document control is going to comprise of these different individual components. So I'm going to OK that. And again, let's synchronize just this set and synchronize. OK. And then back in document control, let's refresh. So now we see the concatenated number. So it can be used on other document control properties, but number is the kind of the most obvious choice. So now we have our individual components of our sheet number, and we also have the full number that is going to show on the document register report and our transmittals. So that's great. We've now got information in document control. What we want to go ahead and do now is actually synchronize our PDFs with document control. So let's imagine a couple of these sheets are now ready to be published and issued out. Again, what I can do is I can choose which sheet parameters I want to use for the naming. So we get some standard ones by default. I'm going to bring in my British standard ones in this example, and I'm going to go into publish settings. So by default, I've got number, sheet number, and current revision number. Again, I'm going to go grab a slightly more complicated one that I've got set up. And that is going to be how we're naming the PDFs. We can also choose around the page setup. We can choose which folder or how to, the dated folders that we're going to publish that information into. Okay. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to pick just a couple of these sheets, and I'm going to choose to synchronize and add revisions. And at the end of this process, we're going to have actually published the revision information into document control and link the PDF. And we can do this as many times as we want until we actually issue the sheets through document control. As soon as they're issued, then I would have to up Revit in Revit before I was able to publish again. Okay, so that's our two sheets published. And then if we return to document control, then we can see that I have set a revision state of pending approval. These can be customized, and we now have two files that have been linked. So we can see that we're linked through to a dated folder in here, and it's also going to have the correct file name that we've set. The reason I set my revision state to pending approval, and I know a number of our customers do the same, is because it allows for a very simple approval process. If I want to adopt that, I can come in as maybe the project lead, and I can change field values and say, actually, these are now approved. And now I have two approved files that I can issue out. And the issue process Really straightforward. I can grab those. I can say issue selected record documents, latest revision, and we're going to go through that process that Andrew described around publishing to Info Exchange. So I'm going to select somebody from my project team, an external person, just give it a test. We would put our message in here, a little bit like doing an email. And we're going to say Info Exchange. Again, all of these lists can be changed. Description of contents, we're pulling that metadata from document control. We've got our files that we've picked from document control. So I didn't need to worry about where those files are on the file system. I asked document control to issue the latest revisions, so it's pulled those in there. And I can say create and transfer. We don't need to go into details of all the options today. And at the end of this, we're going to upload that to Info Exchange, which is that web component for Newformer, and we're going to send a link to Bob in this example, and he's going to be able to download that information. He's also going to get a transmittal form, letting him know exactly what he's receiving. Again, we can change the design of these, which we typically do for each of our customers. So now we've got a couple of files that are published in here. We could select a particular revision, the latest revision. We can see the issue history, which transmittal. We can jump to that transmittal as well.
I think I don't know if you can show it here, Alistair, but you can right click on any of those and it will open up where that PDF is filed on your folder structure, which is something that I enjoy kind of.
So Explorer tasks, selecting file system. That's a great point. It's going to take me exactly to where we publish that out from Revit. Okay, so just to look at this from an external user perspective. So Bob, he's the recipient through this, what we call an Info Exchange transfer. He receives an email. That email will essentially have a link in it, and that link will be to either log on to Info Exchange or just click and download. So he can just download the associated files, really straightforward. Okay, so that's downloaded. And then in Newformer, we can, if we wanted to, we can go and we can see this particular transmittal in the transmittal log. And we can also jump to this transmittal as well in our Info Exchange log, because we sent this out through Info Exchange. This will give me the opportunity to see whether or not Bob has downloaded this. So if I click on this and we say select in log. So this is optional. A lot of this information you can obviously see in document control, but we get a great granular audit trail if you're interested to see whether or not Bob, for example, has actually downloaded it. So we can see we issued it as well as he downloaded it.
That's something I use a lot, just to check, just because you kind of confidence, you know, they've got that information.
Yep. So that was kind of an end-to-end out of Revit into document control and out through Newformer Project Center. I just want to kind of just do it slightly different this time around. So now I'm going to say add revisions from files. And this time I'm going to grab a file, you know, maybe a report or something that's not come from Revit, just to show that even if I haven't imported the metadata using Excel, I can really easily just create this in document control. You know, I've got the number based on the file name. I can give it a title. I can set some of the other metadata as we go, and I can add this into document control as well. So now we'll have one in here which is pending approval again. So I really just wanted to reiterate the fact that it doesn't have to come from Revit. It could be any files that you need to issue on and manage the revisions of on a project. So let's make this approved. The other thing that I want to really quickly show is if we grab both the approved and the published, let's issue these again. But this time, when I issue these selected record documents, I'm not going to send them through Info Exchange. I'm going to use OneDrive or SharePoint as our example today, but I just want to illustrate that on projects where maybe you're not distributing information through Newformer Info Exchange, you can still go through exactly the same process to make sure you get that great consistent log around document control. So again, we'd send it to Bob, but this time rather than Info Exchange, I'm going to pick OneDrive. We would see the same description of contents, the files we get in our audit trail. And I'm going to say create and transfer. And we can set this up on a project by project basis. So maybe depending on what CDE you're using on any particular project. So this is now going to load up my project on OneDrive or SharePoint in my example. Hopefully it will. Let's try that again. There we go. And then I can drag and drop those files straight into this system, common data environment. And at the end of it, when I choose close, then what we're going to see in document control is the fact that these were issued out. So I can look at any of these. And if I look in the issue history, again, we can see that one went via Info Exchange as a transmittal, one went via OneDrive. Transmittal sheet got created. This information is in our report if we were to do a create document register report. So it's really promoting the idea of the same process over and over again, even if we're delivering that information to a different location. Just two more things before we get back to our PowerPoint. So we looked at Bob and how he downloaded information just from a link in an email. If we give him access to Info Exchange, he can log in, and this is useful if I want Bob to send information as well. But he can also come in, and again, it depends what permissions we set in this environment, and he can see our revision history. So the same view that we have in document control, we can afford an external consultant so they can self-serve information if they wish. And finally, we also have an iPad app, the Plans app. And if I refresh this, hopefully this will play nice because it's on my 4G, then this should load in the files that we've just published out through new form of document control. So there's one of them there. We should get the other two or three once that refreshes.
Yeah, I think once that lovely circle of death, as what I call it, stops spinning, we'll see all the documents.
Yeah, I think it's just because I'm on a 4G here. There is a great offline capability, so if I go into one of my other projects, we can illustrate it just as well. So I can pick one of these floor plans, I can select it, I can zoom in, I can mark up, so I can choose markup, and then I get my markup tools if I want to create markups on this information. I can also drop pins, so if I wanted to drop pin, maybe in this elevator lobby, then I can choose to do things like maybe capture a snag, capture a note. That information will get saved back to New Former Project Center as soon as I'm connected to Wi-Fi. And so I will have any images that I've captured around this elevator lobby, any notes, as well as a snapshot of the plan linked into that item. So when I go to document control, I will see that there's a relationship between maybe a snag and a particular deliverable, and similarly, if I was to go into my snagging list, I can get that context because I've started this process from the plan. So that was our demo, really going end to end from an introduction to Project Center right the way through into how do we populate document control from Revit. Let's just kind of quickly review. So we looked at publishing sheets into document control directly from Revit. We also created some revisions from a file on the file system or in a supported EDMS for non-Revit output. So not everything is going to be in the model. There are going to be deliverables outside of that. Again, you can use document control just as easily for that. Support for naming standards. So, those standards which have multiple components in their sheets, we've got some great tools around filtering and concatenating sheet parameters into a single property in new form of document control. We saw how easy it was to create a report, that drawing register report, and we also saw the transmittal sheets get created for us as part of that transmittal process. We distributed information out through new format Info Exchange, but we were also able to drag and drop into a common data environment. We used OneDrive as our example, but the importance of that is that I still keep my log internally. I'm not reliant on the third-party system as a mechanism for understanding what was delivered, where and when, especially after that project is completed. We get an automated audit, what was distributed to whom and when, so we're not having to track that in Excel, and that centralized view and all revisions. And Andrew really touched on this. We're not getting extra copies of that revision throughout Newformer. It's a centralized view. Newformer knows where our revisions are. I can go to document control or the transmittal process and easily grab that information for distribution. And finally, even though the 4G didn't cooperate as I hoped, we did manage to see that we can still access plans through our Plans app when we're out of the office, giving us the opportunity to capture information with a context, the drawing context, and synchronize that back to Project Center while we're mobile. Okay, so that takes us to the last 10 minutes of the webinar, which we've allocated for Q&A. So I'm going to look over now at my colleague Rob, and hopefully he has got some questions for us from our audience today, and we're going to do our best to answer those.
Yeah, thanks, Al. Yeah, we have had a number of questions come in. Some of them possibly already answered during the demonstration, but and some of them quite familiar or quite similar. So I've tried to group them together. Maybe, I think you referenced this already. You showed how to issue drawings from Revit. Can you use document control without Revit?
Yep, so that second issuance, we picked something from the file system. So, you know, if you, I'm sure, would follow a process of, you know, taking your work in progress information, publishing it out to something like a PDF in the file system, and then we just use add revisions from files to bring that into document control. I think that's probably something that you deal with on a very regular basis.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, the majority will be PDFs from Revit, but we also have documents such as designers' health and risk assessment, which would be a Word document or any Excel document. Maybe we've got schedules of accommodation as well. They're not produced in Revit, produced in other software, but as long as it's got a revision on it, we can track that in format document control in the same way that we use our Revit documents.
Okay. Okay. The demo was using BS 1192 type numbering. Can I use my own numbering system, or am I limited to following the British standard?
Well, I think, do you want to take that, Andrew?
Well, because I think you should get an award if you're using the BS 1192 naming convention. It's a difficult one. As in PRP, we've got some BIM level 2 projects, and a lot that we don't. So we obviously had our own office naming standard, which we can use if it's not a BIM level 2 project. If it is a BIM level 2 project, as you've demonstrated, we can use the BS 1192 standard. And then obviously if there's a project-specific standard that a contractor defines that they want their file names named as, we can obviously, which you've demonstrated, that you can do. It's flexible. Yeah. You can name your PDFs any way that you want to.
Yeah, because it's going to change potentially project to project.
Exactly.
So I think that there's a question that maybe relates to that, which is if you've configured a project to follow a project standard or a company standard, do you have to do that each time you start a new project? So what we see a lot of customers do, and I'll check with Andrew to see if they do that at PRP, is that if you have a standard, you set that up on a kind of a standard project, and then for each of your new projects, you can just choose to apply those settings from this standard project. So the short answer is no. You can reuse those settings across projects if you've got a particular standard, whether it's something that's been imposed on you or something that is your practice standard. You can reapply those on projects. You don't have to do it every time. Is that something that?
That's exactly the experience at PRP. We're rolling out design technologies across our teams. You've got one successful project, maybe two, maybe three. Roll it out to other teams. They'll ask you how you set it up. And it was a very quick process to adopt those standards for their project.
Yep, so you can just import those settings from any other project into the project that you're working on.
Okay, and again, maybe this is related to the naming and standards. Someone's asked if they can add their own fields to the document control view. So they might be, I'm guessing, managing different metadata. Does it require customization? Can it be added into document control, or are you limited to what you showed?
So when we did that initial sync, I think initially we had some standard Revit parameters mapped through to document control, sheet name and number. I added a whole bunch of sheet parameters that I'd created in Revit into document control. We did that from within the Revit add-in. You can take any sheet parameter that you create and you can map that into document control. Even without Revit, you can do that within document control. So if you wanted to add more columns into document control to help with filtering and the organization of your data, you can do that. It's not something that you require help from Nuforma on. It's kind of baked into the product that you can change that configuration of columns within document control yourself on a project by project basis.
Okay, great. What else we got here? I think so. I think this is related to info exchange. Does the external team members from my external consultants require a license to use info exchange?
No, so the licensing model really is based on internal users. So really that's what you are paying for as part of your Nuforma subscription. For external users, they use Info Exchange in that environment at no cost. So whether you've got one team member or 1,000 team members, they can download information. You can give them a login to contribute information to the project. There is no cost for those external users.
Okay, and kind of related to that, I guess, is we often have to issue our drawings to the main contractor's platform. Does Nuforma help with this? I think you demonstrated that to some degree.
Yeah, I think we did, but I think maybe the question came in possibly before that. So yeah, just to reiterate then, yeah, we do have the option on a project by project basis to specify additional kind of delivery points. So we use OneDrive or SharePoint in that. I know many of our customers are dealing with CDEs. Again, on a project by project basis, you can put in the URL of that CDE and you can drag and drop, as we saw with the OneDrive example at the end. I think, as I mentioned, the reason for doing that, even though it might seem like you're having to manage it in two places, is that you get that great audit trail for yourself. So independent of that CDE or wherever you're putting it in, you don't necessarily own that product. So if that is taken away at the end of the project, then you don't necessarily have the greatest audit trail. Making sure that this process starts in Nuforma document control, regardless of where you're delivering the information to, means that you, as an organization, have a great set of records as what was issued to whom and when. Does that ring true in PRP?
Yeah, definitely. I agree with that. There's always that fear that we're putting all this information into a common data environment that we don't manage. And so having that internally and knowing that we can get to that information is great for our own office standards and peace of mind.
Okay, and maybe this one directly for you, Andrew. What would you say is the main benefit you have derived from using Nuforma document control?
Sure. I think the easy one for me to answer is that one simple user interface of Nuforma document control, and being able to see the full document set and being able to see the full revision history in one interface in one place. It's probably the main benefit that I've got from Nuforma document control, definitely.
And maybe just to finish, I think there's one that ties in nicely to that, which is, would you use this process on all of your projects?
All of my projects moving forward, I wouldn't go back, definitely. And we've now mandated it as part of our PRP Office standard now. So it'll be rolling out, has rolled out across our teams, and we'll be adopting it over the next couple of months in all projects.
Great. So there are a few other questions which maybe we'll have to follow up on separately. I think we're getting close to the end of the...
Yeah, we're almost at the top of the hour, so I think we'll make that our last question. Thank you, Rob. So that really brings us to the end of the webinar. So I really hope you have found what was presented today interesting and useful. If you'd like to find out more, then please visit us at nuforma.co.uk. And really, thank you again to Andrew Swarbrick from PRP for joining us today. And thanks to everybody on the call, on the webinar, for your attendance. Have a great day.
Thanks, Andrew.
Thanks, Andrew.